Hi. In this lesson, we'll do a little refactoring. Let's make sure that everything related to our routes is in the file routes.ts, which is currently not the case. Look, our parameter declaration remains in apt.stack. It also needs to be moved to Roadist. And our parameter types are defined directly on the page. Let's move that to Roadist as well, and then we'll work a little on TypeScript. Let's first do all this in a primitive format. All right, let's go. What do we need to add? The first route is perfectly fine, but this route needs a little refactoring. So, let's begin with the parameters themselves, which we have in apt.lex. They are like this. Well, let's set them like this. Export const view route params. And we need these ones. Insert them here and use them here. View route params. Good, we use them. Now we need the type of these parameters. Adding export type view route params. It suggests that we can do it this way. But for now, let's specify it explicitly. Okay, what do we see? That we've written very similar things 100 times. I propose creating an additional setup function to help us generate all this stuff. Right now, we're doing this just to start our journey into TypeScript. Later, we'll refine it once more. Therefore, now we'll have some intermediate result. But here, it's more important for us to get acquainted with TypeScript generics. All right, what do I propose we do? Let's do it this way. Let's write a function that will be called const get route params. Well, for now, I'll just define it, just for the future. Return x, we'll write it now. For now, I just defined it as some function. It returns something from somewhere. All right, so, and it will be applied as follows. In general, when you write something like your little library, you often start by figuring out how you'll use it, and only then write its content, okay? Let it be so. Now, I will comment it all out so we keep it visible, and let's see what it changes to, like this. Let it be as follows. Get route params. And here, we will simply pass true, like that. Defines that we have this parameter. Then, we will define the type as follows. Type of view ID route params. Type of is something that simply returns the type of what you passed into it. And get ID, get view ID route. This type will be reused in our case. So, like this one. And it will return the exact same string. Now let's think about how we can write such a function. That is, what it should actually return. So get route params should return this kind of string. When we call it with type of, it should return this kind of string. And here, well, we'll just use it. Let me just copy the contents of this function and break it down because it's quite complex. And we'll talk about it. All right, it should look like this in the end. It looks scary, but I've attached documentation on TypeScript generics to this lesson. This is what you see here. I've attached documentation on array iteration methods. More precisely, not documentation, but a link to a free tutorial on these methods. So, don't worry, you'll figure it all out. And once again, I'll repeat, we will engage with TypeScript throughout this tutorial, and it will gradually reveal itself to you and become easier. At the same time, it's important to understand with TypeScript, describing things that nicely generate types for you can be a bit tricky, but they're very pleasant to use. At the same time, you'll rarely need to use them. Usually, the creators of various libraries have already done this for you. But sometimes you'll want to write your own small tools for your project. And writing them is actually very interesting. Over time, you'll figure out how it's done, and you'll enjoy it. But for now, let's deal with this thing. What is a generic anyway? A generic is a certain type that you can declare and then use within your function. Let me show it in practice. In theory, you will understand it in additional videos and documentation. Look, so what am I saying here? That there exists some TT is precisely our generic, a certain type that generally meets the following condition. That it is a record. What is a record? A record is simply an object where the keys are strings and the values are booleans. Specifically, here we see, it's a certain string, it's a certain boolean. Here I say that this type extends it. Okay? I am saying that an object will be passed to this function. So in practice, this object. And its type fully corresponds to T, that's all. And so we've kind of assigned the object's type to this T. Why do we need this later? So that when we return something, we declare that the result of our output is a record, but not where the key is a string, rather a Boolean value. And what is this record? Where? The key is some keys of the object T, meaning specific, not just a random string, but in this case, exactly IDnig. And its value is already strings. So if we hover over and look, it tells us this is a record, not of strings, but of specific values, IDnig. If we had added XXX true here, it would mean we already have that it's a record of keys where either IDnig or XXX, and here a string. And let's now deal with the logic of this function. Object.case. Object.case returns simply an array of all keys of this object. So in this case, it will be an array of the strings IDnig and XXX. What is the reduce method? It's a method for iterating over an array. It takes a function as its first argument and an initial accumulator value. How does it work? All array elements are iterated sequentially. The array element is assigned to the second argument. We named it key, and the first element is the accumulator. For example, when we take the first parameter, like IDnig will be passed here, and our initial accumulator will be in the accumulator. So on the first pass, there is an empty object in the accumulator, and key is IDnig. And then we say that this function returns an object where we take all the old values of the accumulator, but at the moment it's empty, so we take nothing. And in this object, a certain property appears with a key. Like this, in square brackets, it indicates that this key will become a key. The key here initially will be IDnig, and here we pass a string. In this string, we will have the same key, but with a colon. So essentially, we get back an object like this, meaning the key is IDnig, and here is a string starting with a colon. On the second pass, XXX will get here, and in the accumulator there will already be such an object. We use all the object's values, meaning we'll expand this object and attach the next key. This will be XX. It will come here, and here will be key colon. So now our string, this one here, will be of this format, colon XXXXX. All right. I believe if you haven't encountered reducers or generics before, it may be complicated. But honestly, you can't just explain all this in 5 minutes. How do you actually understand it all? Simply practice by gradually writing and progressing through this course and this tutorial further. And over time, as you use and write more, it will all become clearer and clearer. Watch the attached videos. Don't try to grasp everything at once. It will all gradually settle in your mind layer by layer, and one day it will become clear. I can also recommend copying this code, sending it to a GPT chat, and asking for an explanation. Try to approach from different angles, and you'll figure everything out. All right, let's remove this XXX. We don't need it anymore, and make sure we got what we wanted. So, let's save and check. UID route params is a record with key ID and nickname, and here it's a string value. Let's apply it where we need it, but we already applied everything. Good. Then the type itself. It's just a type, exactly this one. Using typeof, we can assign this type to the variable we need. That's all. ID, nickname, string. Well, getUID route just returns a string, and that's fine. Now we need to apply these types here too. So, UID route params. All right, let's check our types to ensure we haven't broken anything. PNPM types. Nothing's broken. Let's now look at the code itself to see if we broke anything. Yes, all URLs are working as they were. Good. Well, I sincerely believe you will understand everything and learn it all. Just keep learning, and most importantly, strive to apply all that. Understanding will come during the implementation of real tasks. Thank you. Let's move on. To be continued.